At my husband's cousin's funeral, he cried like a widower. His mother whispered, "Not here." 2 weeks later, he said, "I need to tell you the truth." Then I opened his old messages. I keep going back to that funeral in my head. Not because of the flowers, or the chapel, or the way everyone spoke about Meredith, like she had been impossible to love, but impossible to forget. I keep going back because that was the first time my body understood something my mind had refused to say for years. My husband, Blake, was near the front row with his hand over his mouth, shaking so hard his sister had to hold his arm. His mother, Vanessa, kept glancing around like she was embarrassed by the way he was falling apart. His Aunt Patricia sat stiff and silent, staring at the floor. I stood behind them with our kids, Caleb and Hazel, trying to keep Hazel from tugging at my black dress. I remember looking at Blake and thinking, he looks like he lost his wife. Then I hated myself for thinking it. Because the woman in the casket was his cousin. And Meredith had always been the part of Blake's family I didn't know how to question without sounding insane. When Blake and I first got married, Meredith was already there. Not always physically, but always somewhere in the background. Meredith called. Meredith needs help. Meredith might come for Thanksgiving. Meredith is going through something. It was always casual, like she was just another family member orbiting around us. Just his cousin. Just someone he had known forever. Just someone I wasn't supposed to worry about because the very idea was disgusting. That was the word he used the first time I asked. Disgusting. We had only been married about a year. We were at his Aunt Patricia's house for a cookout. Blake went to the garage to get drinks and Meredith followed him. They were gone longer than they needed to be. When they came back, Blake looked tense and Meredith looked amused. Later, in the car, I tried to sound calm. "Is there something weird between you two?" Blake looked at me like I had slapped him. "What?" "You and Meredith," I said. "I don't know. It just feels strange sometimes." He let out a sharp, uncomfortable laugh. "She's my cousin, Clara." "I know. That's disgusting." The way he said it made me feel ashamed for asking. Like I had dragged something innocent into the dirt. So I dropped it. That became the pattern for years. Meredith would show up to a birthday party or a holiday dinner, and Blake would shift. Not enough for anyone else to point at. Just enough for me to notice. He checked his phone more when she was around. He stood straighter. He laughed too hard at her jokes. If she teased him, he went quiet instead of annoyed. If she teased me, he told me later I was being sensitive. One Thanksgiving, Meredith made a joke about how Blake used to be more fun before he became a husband. Everyone laughed. I didn't. On the drive home, I said, "You could have said something." Blake frowned. "About what?" "You know what?" She was joking. It felt mean. She's going through a lot right now. Meredith was always going through a lot. A breakup. A fight with her mom. Money trouble. A bad lease. A health scare. Some crisis that meant Blake had to answer the phone, send advice, drive somewhere, or emotionally disappear for the rest of the night. I didn't hate her at first. That's the part that makes it harder to explain. I tried with her. I invited her to things. I bought her a birthday gift once when Blake forgot. I asked about her life even when she gave me short answers. But I always felt like I was standing outside a locked room. Blake and Meredith had a history I was not allowed to question. If I asked, I was insecure. If I stayed quiet, I had to swallow every strange look, every private joke, every time he defended her faster than he defended me. When Caleb was born, Meredith came to the hospital with a stuffed bear and flowers. She hugged Blake before she hugged me. I remember sitting in that bed, sore and exhausted, watching her whisper something in his ear. His face changed. Just for a second. Then he stepped back and looked at me like he remembered where he was. I told myself I was hormonal. When Hazel was born, Meredith didn't visit right away. She had moved a few hours away by then. Blake said she was busy and dealing with her own problems. But he kept texting someone during those first few weeks, while I was half asleep with a newborn on my chest and a toddler asking for cereal. I asked, "Who are you talking to?" He said, "Family stuff." I didn't push. That's what people don't understand when they ask why I didn't know. Because knowing would mean saying the ugliest possibility out loud. It would mean accusing my husband of something so wrong that even I didn't want to believe my own instincts. So I built a life around not knowing. We had school drop-offs, grocery lists, birthday parties, broken appliances, and bills on the counter. We had normal arguments. We had tired weeknights. We had family photos where everyone smiled. Then Meredith got sick. At first, Blake told me it was serious, but not hopeless. He said Patricia was overwhelmed. He said Meredith didn't have many people she could rely on. I said, of course. Go see her. And I meant it. Even after everything, I wasn't going to be the wife who told him he couldn't visit a sick relative. I packed snacks for his first drive. I told the kids Daddy was going to help family. I reminded him to call when he got there. He did call that first time. After that, the visits became more frequent. Every other weekend turned into almost every weekend. Sometimes he left Friday after work and came back Sunday night looking hollow. He said Patricia needed help. He said Meredith wanted family nearby. He said the doctors were saying things that scared everyone. I tried to be supportive, but the way he grieved before she was even gone unsettled me. One night, he came home late and went straight to the bathroom. I heard the shower turn on. Then I heard him crying. Not quiet tears. Broken crying. I stood outside the door with my hand against the wall. I wanted to knock. I wanted to comfort him. But something stopped me. It felt like I was intruding on grief that wasn't mine to touch. When he came out, his eyes were red. I asked, "Do you want to talk?" He shook his head. "I'm sorry," I said. He looked at me for a long second, like I had said the wrong thing without knowing why. Then he said, "Yeah, me too." That stayed with me. Not thank you. Not I'm scared. Me too. Meredith died 3 months later. The kids didn't really understand. Caleb knew someone in the family had passed. Hazel only knew we had to wear nice clothes and be quiet. Blake barely spoke during the drive to the funeral. He gripped the steering wheel so hard his knuckles went pale. When I asked if he wanted me to drive, he said, "I'm fine." He was not fine. Inside the chapel, people hugged me in that distant family way, like I belonged enough to be polite to but not enough to be included. Patricia hugged Blake and held onto him too long. Vanessa watched them with her mouth pressed tight. Then Blake saw the framed photo near the casket. He stopped walking. It was a picture of Meredith from a few years earlier, smiling somewhere by the water, hair blown across her face. Blake stared at it like the floor had opened beneath him. I touched his back. "Blake." He flinched. During the service, he fell apart. He bent forward with his elbows on his knees, covering his face. His shoulders shook. His sister, Kendra, leaned toward him and whispered something, but he didn't calm down. Vanessa reached for his hand and whispered, "Not here." I heard it because I was close enough. Not, "It's okay." Not, "Breathe." Not, "I know." Just, "Not here." I looked at her. She didn't look back. Patricia kept staring ahead, her face so stiff it looked painful. That was when the thought came to me. He looks like a widower. I buried it because thinking that in a chapel, with a dead woman's family crying around me, felt cruel. After the funeral, Blake disappeared for almost 20 minutes. I found him outside behind the chapel, sitting on a low stone wall with his head in his hands. "The kids are asking where you are," I said. He wiped his face fast. "I'll be there in a minute. Do you want me to take them to the car?" He nodded. I waited for him to say something else. He didn't. On the drive home, Caleb fell asleep first. Hazel leaned against her booster seat with her blanket under her chin. Blake drove in silence. Halfway home, I said, "I know you're hurting." His jaw tightened. "But you're scaring me a little." He didn't answer. "Blake." "I heard you." "That's it." He took a breath through his nose. "I can't do this right now." "Do what?" "Talk." So we didn't. For 2 weeks, our house felt dim. Blake went to work, came home, helped with the kids, and moved around me like a ghost. He barely ate. He slept badly. Sometimes I woke up and found his side of the bed empty. One night, I went downstairs and saw him sitting in the kitchen in the dark with his phone on the table. The screen was black. He was just staring at it. I said, "Are you okay?" He looked up slowly. "No." It was the first honest thing he had said in weeks. I sat across from him. "Talk to me." He rubbed both hands over his face. His eyes were swollen, but he wasn't crying yet. "I need to tell you something," he said. A cold line ran down my back. "What?" He looked toward the hallway, checking if the kids were awake. Then he said, "I can't carry it anymore." For one strange second, I thought he was going to tell me about debt. Or maybe some old mistake. Maybe he had kissed someone years ago and the guilt had mixed with grief until he couldn't hold it. I was ready for something painful. I was not ready for the truth. He said, "It was Meredith." I stared at him. He swallowed. "It was always Meredith." My brain refused to put the words in the right order. "What does that mean?" He pressed both hands against the table. "I loved her," he said. "Before you. After you. I tried not to. I swear I tried." The kitchen went quiet except for the refrigerator humming behind me. I said, "She was your cousin." He closed his eyes. "I know." You told me I was disgusting for asking. I know. You made me feel crazy. I know. That was when I stood up. I didn't have a plan. I just couldn't sit across from him anymore. He started talking faster, like if he got everything out, it might become less horrible. He said they had crossed lines before I ever knew him. He said it stopped, then started again emotionally, then became physical again during different points in our marriage. He said after Hazel was born, they stopped meeting that way, but the messages never stopped. The feelings never stopped. He said, she knew me in a way nobody else did. I laughed once. It came out sharp and ugly. He flinched. I said, and what was I? He looked at me like he wanted me to help him answer. So I did. I was the wife. The normal life. The cover. He shook his head. No. Clara, no. I loved you. Don't. I did. Not enough to tell me the truth before I gave you 12 years. His face crumpled. He started crying, but I had nothing soft left in me at that moment. I asked who knew. He didn't answer fast enough. My stomach dropped. Who knew, Blake? He whispered, Patricia knew some. My mom suspected. Kendra probably guessed. I gripped the back of a chair. So your family let me sit at holidays with her. He stayed silent. They let me bring my kids around her. He said, it wasn't like that. That sentence snapped something in me. If you tell me one more time this wasn't what it was, I will walk out of this kitchen and never have another private conversation with you again. He went quiet. I slept in the guest room that night. The next morning, Blake made breakfast for the kids like nothing had happened. Pancakes. Hazel's favorite cup. Caleb's lunchbox by the door. I watched him butter toast and realized how terrifying normal can look after someone ruins your life at midnight. When Caleb asked why I looked tired, Blake froze. I said, I didn't sleep well, buddy. Blake looked relieved. That was the first moment I understood how much he still expected me to protect him. I waited until the kids were at school before I asked for his phone. Blake was standing by the sink, rinsing a coffee mug he hadn't used. His hands stopped moving. What? Your phone, I said. He looked exhausted. Clara, I told you the truth. No. You told me what you wanted to say out loud. I want to know what you were hiding while I was living beside you. He gripped the counter. If you refuse, I'll assume it's worse than what you admitted. He handed it over. That almost made me angrier. How easy it was. Like he had already decided that now Meredith was gone, the evidence didn't matter anymore. Most of their messages were deleted or buried, but not all of them. Blake had saved pieces like souvenirs from a life he had been too cowardly to live openly. There were no graphic details, and honestly, I'm grateful for that. I don't think my mind could have handled it. But the emotional part was worse in a different way. I miss you. I thought about calling you all night. She's a good mother. I know that sounds terrible. I wish I had been braver. That one stayed in my hands like a live wire. Braver. I read it again, hoping the meaning would change. It didn't. He didn't wish he had been braver by ending it. He wished he had been braver by choosing her. I sat on the edge of our bed with his phone in my lap, looking around the room we had shared for years. The framed photo from our anniversary trip. The laundry basket he never emptied unless I asked. The little ceramic dish where I kept earrings. Everything suddenly looked borrowed. Blake stood in the doorway. Please stop reading, he said. I looked up. Why? Because you're hurting yourself. No. You hurt me. I'm just finally seeing where. He sat down on the chair by the window but kept his distance. It's over now, he said. I stared at him. Because she died? He didn't answer. That's not over, I said. That's unavailable. His mouth tightened. That's cruel. What's cruel is making me compete with a woman I was told not to worry about because she was family. He said my name like a warning. Clara. No. You don't get to make your grief untouchable. Not when your grief is tied to my marriage being a lie. That was the first time he got angry. He stood up. Our marriage was not a lie. I held up the phone. Then what do you call this? A mistake. A complicated, awful mistake. For 12 years. He looked away. That's not a mistake, I said. That's a second relationship. His face changed when I said it. Like I had finally named the thing he had been protecting with softer words. He tried to explain. He said Meredith had been part of his life before he knew how to separate love from family loyalty. He said he hated himself. He said he chose me every day by staying. That almost made me laugh. You didn't choose me, I said. You chose comfort. You chose our house, our kids, someone to stand next to you at Christmas. You chose a life that looked decent. He whispered, I loved you too. Two is the problem. For the next few days, I moved through the house like I was underwater. I packed lunches. I answered school emails. I folded laundry because the kids still needed clean clothes. Blake slept on the couch. Sometimes I heard him crying late at night, and I felt an awful mix of pity and disgust. I didn't tell the kids the truth. They were too young for adult ugliness, and I refused to turn their childhood into evidence. But I called my mother, Joanne. She answered cheerfully at first. Then she heard my voice and went quiet. What happened? I tried to explain, but the words felt ridiculous. My husband had an affair with his cousin. There was a long silence. Then she said, Clara, what? I told her enough. Not everything. Just enough for someone outside Blake's family to confirm I had not lost my mind. When I finished, my mother said, come here. I can't. The kids have school. Then I'm coming to you. She arrived that evening with grocery bags, even though I hadn't asked for anything. She made soup. She wiped my counters. She hugged Caleb and Hazel. She did all the practical things people do when emotions are too big to hold directly. After the kids were asleep, she sat with me at the kitchen table. What are you going to do? She asked. I think I want a divorce. She closed her eyes. Not because she disagreed. Because she knew what that meant. Then she said, think clearly. Not softly. That was the best advice anyone gave me. Blake's family gave me the opposite. Vanessa called the next morning, voice trembling. He told me you two are having problems. I almost smiled at that. Problems. I said, did he tell you why? She passed recently, Clara. He's grieving. He confessed. The line went quiet. Finally, Vanessa said, he should not have told you right now. Not, I'm sorry. Not, I can't believe he did that to you. He should not have told you right now. That told me everything. So you knew, I said. I knew he was confused. He was married. He was also suffering. That was how they had justified it for years. They had turned betrayal into suffering. They had made secrecy sound like sacrifice. I ended the call before I said something I couldn't take back. Patricia texted later. There are things you don't understand. I stared at that message for a long time. Then I replied, you're right. I don't understand how a whole family watched me be lied to and still thinks I owe silence. She never responded. Kendra called 2 days later. She was crying before I even said hello. I didn't know it was still happening, she said. Still. So you knew there was something to continue? She sniffed. I suspected. Years ago. But nobody would talk about it. Mom said it was old family weirdness and not to stir things up. Old family weirdness? I know how it sounds. No, I don't think you do. She cried harder. I'm sorry. I believed she was sorry. I also believed she had benefited from not knowing too much. When I told Blake I had spoken to his family, he panicked. What did you say? The truth. His face went pale. Clara, please don't turn this into a public punishment. You had a private affair for years, and now my honesty is the punishment? He rubbed his forehead. Our kids are going to hear things. Our kids, I said. And they won't hear it from me. But I'm not lying to adults, so you can keep your reputation clean. That became the line between us. He wanted healing with privacy. I wanted peace without pretending. We tried one counseling session, not for reconciliation, but because I wanted to learn how to talk to him without shaking. The therapist asked Blake what he wanted from me. He said, I want her to understand that I'm grieving 2 losses. I turned to him. 2. He looked at me carefully. Meredith. And maybe my marriage. I said, you grieved her like a wife before you admitted I wasn't being treated like one. The room went quiet. After that session, Blake stopped asking me to wait before making decisions. I think he finally realized I was not in shock anymore. I was clear. I met with a divorce consultant a friend recommended. I didn't go in looking for revenge. I went in with a notebook, bank statements, childcare schedules, and a list of things I needed to understand. He asked if I felt safe at home. I said, physically, yes. Then I stopped. Because there are other ways to be unsafe. Ways that don't leave bruises or broken doors. Ways that make you doubt your own eyes for years. I went home and told Blake I was filing. He sat on the edge of the couch with his hands clasped. Is there anything I can say? I thought about it. For 12 years, I had wanted him to say the right thing. I wanted him to defend me when Meredith made little comments. I wanted him to admit I wasn't crazy. I wanted him to tell me the truth before death made confession convenient. Now there was nothing left that could fix the timing. No, I said. There isn't. He nodded, but he looked destroyed. A part of me wanted to comfort him. That part made me angry, because it proved I had loved him honestly. Even after everything, I still had the instinct to soften the fall for him. So I went upstairs instead. The backlash got worse after he moved into Vanessa's house. I didn't post anything online. I didn't message the whole family. I didn't show screenshots to people who didn't need to see them. But when people reached out with careful little accusations, I stopped protecting him. Vanessa sent, "He is broken. Please don't make permanent choices from pain." I replied, "He had a long affair with his cousin during our marriage. I am making choices from the truth." A cousin texted, "This isn't the time to punish him." I replied, "He confessed after she died because he wanted me to hold his grief. I'm not doing that." Someone else wrote, "Meredith isn't here to defend herself." I replied, "I'm not arguing with a dead woman. I'm leaving my husband." Those replies spread faster than I expected. Suddenly the same people who had told me to be quiet stopped calling. A few apologized. Most disappeared. I preferred the silence. Kendra asked to meet at a coffee shop a week later. I almost said no, but she sounded different. Not defensive. Small. When I got there, she was already sitting in the corner with untouched tea in front of her. She said, "I should have said something years ago." I sat across from her. "Yes." She looked down. "I told myself I didn't know enough. That was easier." She nodded. "It was." I appreciated that she didn't make excuses after that. She told me there had been rumors before I met Blake. Whispers after family parties. Patricia crying once in the bathroom. Vanessa telling everyone not to dig up shame. Kendra said when Blake married me, the family acted relieved, like I had solved something. I sat there listening, feeling my marriage shrink into something I had never agreed to be part of. "So I was the solution," I said. Kendra's eyes filled again. "I think they wanted you to be." I left before my coffee got cold. That night, Blake came by to pick up clothes. The kids were inside watching cartoons when I met him in the driveway. I said, "Did you marry me because your family thought I would fix you?" He looked wounded by the question, which almost made it worse. "No." "Then why did they act like I did?" He leaned against his car and looked at the ground. "Because I let them." That was the closest thing to accountability I had gotten from him. He said, "I wanted to be normal." I answered, "So did I." For once, he had no response. "The kids know we are separating now. They know Dad is staying with Grandma. They know we both love them and they did nothing wrong. Caleb is old enough to be angry in quiet ways." Hazel asks the same questions over and over, like if she phrases them differently, the answer will change. "Will Daddy come back? Will we still have pancakes? Will you both come to my school thing?" I say yes to what I can. Blake and I are trying to co-parent without turning every exchange into a courtroom. Some days he is gentle. Some days he looks at me like I destroyed the last piece of his old life. Maybe I did. But only because he handed me the truth and expected me to carry it quietly. The calm victory is not that he suffers. I don't wake up hoping his day is terrible. The victory is that I stopped standing guard over his lie. For years, I mistook silence for maturity. I thought being a good wife meant swallowing discomfort, giving grace, not making scenes, not asking questions that sounded ugly. But silence did not protect my marriage. It protected everyone who already knew more than I did. Now the house is quieter. Some nights, after the kids are asleep, I sit in the living room with one lamp on. The couch still has the dent where Blake used to sit. His coffee mug is gone from the cabinet. Half the closet is empty. It hurts. But underneath the hurt is something steadier. I can breathe in my own home. I don't check the sound of his phone. I don't measure his mood after family gatherings. I don't wonder why one woman's name can change the air in a room. The truth hurt, but it ended the years of guessing. Blake still says he loved me. Maybe he did, in the way selfish people love what keeps them safe. Maybe he loved our children, our routines, and the version of himself he got to be when I stood beside him. But I deserved to be loved without a secret sitting between us at every holiday table. I deserved a marriage where I wasn't quietly competing with someone everyone told me not to worry about. I didn't break my family by leaving. I found out it had been broken long before I knew where to look. So when people ask if I'm really going to divorce him after all these years, after 2 kids, after Meredith is gone and the affair can't continue, I tell them the same thing now. She died. The betrayal didn't. And if that makes me cruel, maybe I can live with being cruel. Because for the first time in 12 years, I'm not the last person in the room pretending everything was normal.